Jan, Craig, good to have you with us to discuss the Bundesliga. Jan, I'll start with you. I remember when we first found out the Bundesliga was going to be the first league to return, I was telling a buddy, if there was one league to come back, it had to be this one because we were going to have a legit title race. I'm accustomed to being wrong, but what happened?
It happened that Bayern has done what they always do when the goings get tough, when we get into March, April, May. I know we kind of delayed it a bit, going into May. They are always brilliant. It just sums up this round that Bayern took 3 points. Leipzig, Dortmund, Leverkusen, and Gladbach took 2 points. This Englische Woche, this extra day in the German league. I mean, we can hope for Dortmund. We can say they are challengers. They have great talents. But then Bayern just turns up with a great balanced team, do whatever they have to do. And then Kimmich, of all, do a brilliant winner for them. Okay, Dortmund should have had a penalty when Boateng used his hand. But still, at the end of the day, you just felt that was deserved Bayern. Have we seen it before? Unfortunately, yes, the last 7 years.
Craig, we might have expected Bayern to win the title, but not after 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically it's not won yet, but I mean, when you look at the fixtures got coming up, I think they've got to go to Leverkusen, they've got to play Gladbach, but they're playing a couple of teams either in the bottom three or close to the bottom three, so it is very unlikely. Look, Bayern, and Jan touched on this a few days ago, Dortmund couldn't afford to lose the game, but to give all the rest of the teams a chance, Dortmund really had to win, and you got a feeling that knocked the stuffing out of Gladbach, Leverkusen and Leipzig. I mean, Leverkusen losing 4-1 at home to Wolfsburg, a team who are close to them, but still, you're at home. The argument has been made without the home fans. It is more difficult for the home teams these days. The advantage is gone. But Bayern made a big decision, Sebi, back in November. They didn't mess around. You know, Kovac, the appointment of Kovac wasn't working, and they made the decision to chop him. And Hansi Flick came in, and it was absolutely the correct decision to make, unfortunately, for the rest of the Bundesliga. If Kovac had still been there and there were still the same issues, then it might have been a tighter race.
I might take the other side of that, Craig. This is the year that Bayern should have slipped, right? They had to fire their manager. They've had boatloads of injuries. Jan, if the chasing pack didn't catch them now, when are they ever going to catch Bayern?
It's a very good question because, well, we have criticized Bayern for not kind of replacing their big stars. I mean, last year they said, well, we give Robben and Ribéry, we'll give them another season. They looked a bit, not old, but not that hungry. But quietly now, Bayern has kind of done a generation change in their team. I mean, the young players now like Kimmich and Gnabry and Koeman and Davies, sensational. Alaba now seems an old, experienced player compared with these. I mean, and then they will get Sané from Manchester City, and they will most probably get Havertz from Leverkusen. And who's going to stop them? I don't know. I think the biggest opposition for Bayern is Bayern themselves. And Craig said it. If they kept Kovac, they would be in trouble because he kind of, although he was a former player himself like Flick in Bayern, he kind of took them away a bit from that Bayern DNA. And I think the symbolic thing is about Thomas Muller, who is Bayern. That is the man who symbolized the way they are playing. And he's on fire at the moment. 17 assists, always involved. And then they are Bayern, and Bayern can only beat themselves, unfortunately.
Craig, of the two closest chasers, Dortmund and Leipzig, who have both fallen back, who have you been more disappointed in since we've returned to play?
Well, Dortmund did win their first 2 games, and they were against teams that was around about them. Obviously, Schalke have had a tough start, but ultimately, I think Leipzig have been more disappointing. But Dortmund, I expected a bit more. The interesting thing, and I don't know what the reaction's been in Germany, and Jan can maybe answer this, is has there been any questioning of the Lucien Favre's team selection, Jan? Because we talked about it 24 hours before the game. What was he going to do? Was he going to go with the same team, or are we going to bring Chan and Jadon Sancho, 2 key players, back in? He left them on the bench. He brought them back in at halftime when arguably Bayern were managing the game. Has there been any reaction in Germany, and particularly Dortmund, to Favre's team selection?
Well, I 100% agree with you, Craig. I also said before the game that how can you not bring Sancho in when you knew that the only chance they had was that the offensive Bayern will make high pressure and they will have a lot of space in first half, and they did. And it's too easy to say afterwards when Sancho came on, he didn't look well. He didn't play as we expect him to do. But I mean, the space he could have had in first half was enormous. And it put Sean on halftime. And I think that the team selection of Favre was wrong. He's been criticized in Germany because that culture, that winning mentality that Dortmund would like to have to be the challenger to Bayern is not even there. So Favre, straight after the game, he made an interview and said, I know what's going on here. I will tell you in 2 weeks' time what's going on. And the next day he backpedaled a bit and said, I didn't mean that. But I think that it's all about who they could bring in. I mean, I'm a bit surprised, although I like Niko Kovac, that Niko Kovac comes forward as the biggest candidate for them. I think that the Dortmund fans will see something else. They don't want to see someone who was kicked out of Bayern. That is a bit of a proudness of them. But I think Favre made a wrong team selection. Would have won? I'm not sure. But I know that Sancho would have taken advantage of all the space they had in the first half.
That's an interesting point. Sorry, Seb, to cut across, but that's an interesting point because we talked about this right after the game on the show, and Dan Thomas was arguing, well, it's all very well saying Sanchez should have played, but look at him in the second 45. He didn't do a great deal. But that was the point we made, Jan. The space was there in the first 45 minutes because once Bayern got that lead, they used their experience. They got the 2 blocks in front of the penalty box, and they could pick and choose when they went forward and hit on the counter. So for those people out there that are saying, Sancho didn't play very well when he came on, we didn't see his pace, there was nowhere for him to run into, whereas in the first half, there was space for Brandt to run into. There was space for Hazard to run into. But that was denied in the second half. So for those out there saying, well, hindsight's a wonderful thing, the game early on was there where you could hit on the break in behind. As Bayern wore the game on, the space in behind just dwindled, and it wasn't there for the likes of Sancho and others to operate.
Guys, we can't talk about Dortmund without talking about Erling Haaland. Jan, you first on this. Obviously, he was blanked in the game against Munich, VAR, potential penalty aside. But before that, on the weekend against Wolfsburg, 0 shots on goal. So back-to-back games with no goals. Any worry about what you've seen from Haaland in the last 2 matches?
Not at all. I'm more amazed that he had that period just scoring goals for fun as a 19-year-old. I think the away game against Wolfsburg was one of those days where it didn't happen for you, and your American friend Brooks was doing well against him. Against Bayern is always hard. This is hard for a guy like him to do it. I think it's more worrying that he crashed with a referee and got an injury. I mean, I've seen a lot of things in football, but I have never seen that before. And he is now out against Paderborn. He's not playing for Dortmund this weekend. I think we have to be patient with Erling Haaland and any 19-year-old on and off the pitch. They will have games that they won't score. Then they will come back again. I think that against Schalke, he looked ever so fit, and that is just 10 days ago. So he'll be okay, but let's never forget that he is 19. We can't expect him to do wonders every game that he plays.
I thought you Norwegians were tough, Jan. I've played with a lot of you Scandinavians. What's happened? You're getting injured backing into a referee. What's happened to those tough Norwegians?
Well, they say if you crash with a referee, you can't see the referee be carried out, can you? But it was we were sitting watching the game, and I was texting desperately around in the Dortmund area, and there was not too many in there, and I just got a text, just watch, he's crashing with a referee, and quite likely. But you will never see Ellen Johnson, your teammate at Chelsea, crash with a referee. Then the referee will probably be dead at the moment.
All right, Jan, you mentioned it, Dortmund playing Paderborn on the weekend. Let's take a look at the rest of the Bundesliga fixtures. Action gets underway on Friday. Freiburg and Leverkusen will meet on Saturday. Leaders Munich are at home against Fortuna Düsseldorf. And as we mentioned, Dortmund against relegation dwellers Paderborn on Sunday. Speaking of Dortmund, Thomas Delaney joins Gab and Jules on the latest edition of the Gab and Jules podcast. Make sure to download it this week.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.